Yes, hello everyone. My name is Tabitha and I'm a program coordinator at INASP and I'm part of the Authorate team as well. I help manage the online courses that we do and work a lot with the community at Authorate. And today I'm going to be assisting Alex in this masterclass.
Thank you so much. Macy, are you here?
She's not.
Okay. Okay. Macy was also enlisted to be assisting with this masterclass. Um, uh, and well, I'm Alejandra. I'm Alejandra Reola. I am from Mexico and I teach science, writing, and communication at the Facultad de Ciencias Biológicas of the Universidad Autónoma de Nuevo León. And I will be your facilitator today. The purpose of this session, we have an overall purpose that is to use group discussion techniques. I edited this yesterday. Group discussion techniques to teach and discuss topics that are related to academic writing. That is, we are going to be using some, I don't want to say novel, but we are going to be using group discussion techniques and active learning techniques to discuss these topics that are related to academic writing. And the objective is that together we are going to find the characteristics that we should consider when choosing a journal for our research. Now, I can see that we have 44 participants so far. So we are going to start with a little networking. We're going to meet different people. What's going to happen is that we're going to be, yes, thank you. What's going to happen is that you are going to be taken from one room to the next, and you're going to be meeting a couple people from the group, from the session, and you're going to discuss these questions. Have you published a paper in the last year, or are you planning to publish soon? And the other question is, how did you choose that journal? So you're going to discuss in groups, and in a few minutes, you're going to be taken to a breakout room with another one or two participants, and you're going to discuss this. We're going to do this 3 times. So you're going to be taken to one group, then come back, then go to another group, come back, and then to go to another group. We are going to be discussing the same questions. And when we come back in about 15 minutes, you're going to tell me what you discussed, okay?
Hello.
We are back.
Hello, Nasir. Hi. Hello again. Yeah. So sorry, I can't switch on my camera for some reason. But
Okay, so we are about to join our last breakout room in a few.
Ma'am, I want to say this. We have very limited participants. Kindly add at least 4 to 5 participants that we can discuss. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we are going back to the rooms.
You are muted.
Hi, thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah, it's gonna happen a lot. Okay, thank you for letting me know. Now, I need 4 people to tell me what you discussed in the breakout rooms. Nasir, you're muted, but go on.
Okay, So what we discussed in the previous session was when we select a journal, we look at the scope of the journal, that what kind of articles and what kind of specialty it deals in. When we look at the impact of the journal, that what's the quality or the standing of the journal. Then we look at our own research, that what our research is worth of, whether it's a local level or it's a regional, of a regional impact, of an international impact. So we go accordingly, we select a journal. When you look at the frequency of publishing of the journal, that how frequent it is journal, so that we can calculate the processing time of our journal. Then we try to look at the instruction to the authors and look at a few issues of that journal in order to find out what kind of research they are already publishing. And the last thing is that we are very careful about to avoid the predatory journals. So we take care that we don't be a victim to them. So, and last thing is the article processing charges, or how much that journal charges. So if we are from a third world country, so we have a look at that, and if it's not in our list, then we try to look for another journal as well, or find some funding. Yes. So these are this is what we discussed. Right?
Okay, well, you covered all the bases. So that's great. Thank you, Nasir. And Dr. Zainab has her hand raised up.
Yes. How are you, everybody? Hi, Alex. Good to see you again.
Yes.
I'll start with first a question, then I'll tell my story. I like to tell my story because I'm not a core academic, and there are a lot of things that a lot of core academics don't know about those researchers like us who are not core academics. So I was saying in the breakout rooms that for me, I publish for two main reasons. One, I enjoy the process of publishing, and two, I do it to mentor and encourage my junior ones who plan to go into academics when they're done with their training. So I've chosen for my next paper, I've chosen the journal that is usually my go-to option, which is the Journal for Plastic Surgeons in Nigeria. In Nigeria, I'm a plastic surgeon. Why do I choose that journal? One, because my article is not likely to get rejected because it's out of the scope of the journal. I know that. Then two, no APCs. And three, it's supposed to be a blind peer review process, but because we're a small number, we're just about 200 in Nigeria, so almost everybody knows everybody. So sometimes the reviewers might get in contact with you, apart from the comments on the journal website. They might call you to say, well, I've reviewed your article, but I think if you added this and that in addition to what I have mentioned, then it will make your article much better, and then you have a higher possibility of it getting accepted. So those are the three reasons why I chose that journal and why I publish. So my question is for Hasib, and the question is, he mentioned something very interesting, that he found out that the library of his institution pays the APCs for a certain journal. For him as an author, he doesn't need to pay anything. Sounds really interesting, but what kind of open access model would that fit into? Thank you.
I think Hasib had to leave. But I think that will fall into the gold open access, except the author is not paying, but rather their institution. My university has a similar program that they will cover some of the cost of publishing. So I think that's a similar program to what Hasib mentioned. I don't know if that answers your question.
It does. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we have time for one more person to share what they discussed in the breakout rooms.
Can I say something?
Yes, of course.
Okay, so I think in addition, in our break room, we discussed about the selection, making sure we are not dealing with a predatory journal. Because at times you may fall with a predatory journal and you get duped. And also there was the issue of the timeline between submission and publication. How long does it take for the journal to actually release the final copy of the paper you're submitting? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Well, you covered all of the bases and you have a very good idea of what to look for in a journal. What I want to do, let me share my screen for a minute. Uh-huh. I'm sorry, I can't see my presentation. Give me 1 second. Here it is. Okay, what we're going to do today, as I mentioned on Twitter, we are going to play opposite day today. The question that I want you to discuss is how can you choose the worst journal for your research? Let's make sure that you choose.
We can't see your screen, Alex. Sorry.
I'm not sharing my screen, right?
Oh, we can't see your screen. Sorry.
You can or you can't?
We can't.
Now?
Yes, it's coming. Yeah, we can see it. Perfect.
Oh,
Thank
perfect. Sorry. Yeah, I'm nervous. Anyway, we are going to go into breakout rooms again. What we're going to do is we're going to play opposite day. We are going to think about the worst, about how we can choose the worst journal for your research. Like now you have a very good idea of how to choose a good journal for your research, but now you're going to discuss how to choose the worst possible journal for your research. I want you to, for 1 minute, I'd like you to think about the worst, how to choose the worst journal for your research. And after that minute has passed, we are going to go into groups of 2, and then we're going to go into groups of 4. And then we are going to share our ideas into in a whiteboard. Do I have any questions before we begin? So,
yeah, ma'am.
Yes?
It's clear, ma'am.
Oh, perfect. So for 1 minute, think about how you can choose the worst possible journal for your research. And then you are going to be taken to breakout rooms and discuss with your peers.
I couldn't find a breakout room yet. I see we are all still together.
We are going to create the breakout rooms and send you there in a minute. Yeah, we're going to send you there in a minute.
Let me know when you want to start, Alex.
Mm-hmm. We are moving to the breakout rooms now. You will be taken to groups of 2, and then when we come back, we are going to create groups of 4. Okay, welcome back. Thank you, everyone. And let's go back to we're going to go back to breakout rooms, and we are going to have a little bit more time to discuss this time. So you're going to have about 6 minutes to discuss. Remember, we are looking for what is the worst journal for my research, and let's go back to the rooms and see you in a bit.
think everyone is back.
Hey, welcome everyone. So what you have here is a whiteboard, and I would like you to add one thought per sticky note about the ideas that you discuss on how to make, on how to choose the worst journal for your research. And just one per sticky note. You can find more sticky notes on your right. And let's see what you all discussed.
We don't have the link.
The whiteboard is, it's on Zoom.
It says the host has disabled participant whiteboarding, Alex.
Okay, we're having some technical issues. Let me.
Yeah, I'm working on it.
Okay, we're working on that.
I think it looks like people are able to type. So
Okay, we're starting. Okay, we are seeing a few answers as of now. I can see journals without a website, publication cost, so choosing a journal with low cost of production, not seeking mentorship, or looking at predatory journals, or fast turnout. Responding to random emails offering publication, very good. I can see this purple one. Based on emails, selecting a journal based on an email invitation, or not doing the homework in selecting your journal, not looking at the scope, unverifiable email addresses. Let me see this little purple one. Journals with a very quick turnaround, that's usually a warning sign, very good. Responding to pressure to publish, choosing predatory journals. We're seeing a lot of very, very good answers here. By replying to some email, not referring to the ranking index, writing in a journal in a language I am not aware of. I guess that's always a good idea to check the language. I'm a little lost in my whiteboard. There you are. Okay. Well, very good answers. Thank you, everyone. Do you want to add anything before we go on a break? So far, what I can see is emailing or answering suspicious emails or answering very insistent emails, publishing in a journal without a website, choosing the cheapest journal, that may be a warning sign, are journals that accept your article within 1 day, or journals that send you an email to ask you to publish, and then they will accept your paper in a couple of days. So these are all very good questions, and I want you to sit with this. We are going to have a 10-minute break, and I will see you at 8:30. Okay, we are about to end our break. If you are already here with us, can you guess which emoji will win the race? It's a good idea to have a visible timer when you're teaching an online class and you're giving a break. Just share something like this. This is a free timer that I found online. It has a lot of ads, but whatever. So you can have so people can have an idea of what time they have allotted to come back. So we are about to come back to finish our break. Can you guess which emoji will win? It's 15 minutes left on the race. Will it be the starry-eyed emoji? No, the nosy emoji is taking the lead. And number 10, did anybody have I'm gonna call it nosy emoji. Okay, thank you everyone. Thank you for coming back. Now, before we begin, do you want to share a little bit of your impressions on our last activity, on our previous activity, the discussion about what can go wrong? Because we are going to, I always lose my PowerPoint presentation here. Let me try that again. So now that we have discussed what are the worst things we can do to choose a journal, I have a small presentation about what not to do. And we can close the discussion in a minute. So what not to do when choosing a journal? You'll have a very good idea of what not to do. But let's start with a big one. Don't decide at the last minute. Whenever possible, and this is something that I tell my students, whenever possible, decide early. And by early, I mean before you even begin to draft the paper, even better, before you start the project. The moment you're writing your grant or you're writing your application, when you're planning your research, this is the time when you should be thinking about where you would like to publish. Why? If you do this, if you decide early, you can target your paper better. And you can see if there are any requirements that you need to comply with. So maybe there are some national or international regulations that the journal will ask you to comply with. For example, I live in Mexico. So in Mexico, we have a law that specifies how we should treat animals. So if I'm doing research in Mexico, I need to comply with that law. But also, if I plan to publish in a European journal, then I need to consider the European regulations as well. And if I have finished the experiment, it is very difficult for me to go back and redo the experiments or increase my sample size. And like I tell my students, you cannot bring your rats back to life to perform the experiment again. So if there are any reporting guidelines that you need to follow, somebody in the chat said, begin with the end in mind. This is a very good advice. When at the moment you start the project, you should consider how you would like the project to end, how you would like your papers or your publications to look at the end of the project. So deciding on the journal early will let you know if there are any regulations that you need to follow, if there are any reporting guidelines that you need to follow, if you need to gather informed consent, or if you need to provide an ethics statement, or if you need approval by an ethics committee, and if there are any mandatory experiments that the journal requires. I know at least for plant compounds, there are certain particular tests that you need to do in order to be considered for that journal. So this is what you do. You don't decide at the last minute. You choose your journal as early as possible. The other one, and you all mentioned the scope when we were discussing in groups and when you were sharing what not to do when choosing a journal. Well, don't skip the journal scope. Always look for journals that have published work that is similar to yours. How can you do this? You can consider journals that have published the work you will cite. So look at your references. The journals that appear in your references will very likely be interested in your research. And some people mentioned this as well. Ask your colleagues where they have published. I know when I was discussing in groups, somebody mentioned, Lenny, I think it was, who mentioned that he asked his colleagues where they have published, and this is a very good indicator where they could publish as well. When you read the scope, you can make sure that your work will be of interest to the journal's audience. And remember that some predatory journals are going to have comically broad scopes. So if you see a journal that covers everything from astronomy to zoology, that may not be a good sign. Now, don't disregard the instructions. Once you've chosen the journal, find the author's instructions and read them before you start preparing your paper. That means that you can comply with everything that the journal asks. You can see the format that the journal wants you to use, the style of references that the journal wants you to use, how they format their method section, or whether they follow a basic IMRAD format, that is introduction, methods, results, and discussion, or if they follow another format, if they put the methods at the end, or if they mix results and discussion. You can all be. Now, you have to consult the instructions before you write the paper. You have to consult them while you're preparing your paper. This will help you format the sections, the images, and the references accordingly. And then you need to check them again before submitting your paper to make sure that you don't miss any key details. Now, what kind of questions can be answered by reading the instructions? What categories of article does the journal publish? That means, do they publish reviews, systematic reviews, short reviews, short communications, letters to the editor, original papers, etc. You can find what is the maximum length of the article, because when you read this and you write your paper with that word limit in mind, that's always easier than going back and slashing half of the paper so you can meet the word limit. You can find what is the maximum length of the abstract. Usually they're going to be somewhere between 250 and 300 words. The sections that the article includes, in what order, and what are the guidelines for each section, whether you can write in the passive voice or the journal prefers the active voice, or even the spelling. If you're going to use British English or American English, some journals do have requirements for that. If the journal has a template for articles that you should use, and if so, how can you access it? And as I mentioned, the guidelines for writing style, whether they want you to use British spelling or American spelling or whatever. How many figures and tables are allowed, and what are the requirements for them if you need to send editable figures or if you need a particular format, the style of the references and the format of the references, whether the journal posts supplementary material online and how can you provide this material, the electronic format that the paper should be prepared, that you should use to prepare the paper, and how to submit the paper, as well as other issues regarding the use of preprints and other instructions. Another don't ignore the indices. Some people mention the indices in our whiteboard. So you need to check where the journal is indexed. So for example, PubMed, Medline, Science Direct, or Elsevier, Clarivate, and DOAJ, these are all examples of indices. And always prefer journals that are indexed in databases that you know and use. So if you use PubMed primarily, if you're a medical researcher and you use PubMed primarily for your research, which is a great idea because this is an open, free database that anyone can access, then it will be a good idea for you to publish in a journal that is indexed in PubMed, because that means that it will be available to people who do similar research to you, that it will reach a particular audience. If you use PubMed but publish in a journal that is only indexed in, say, Emerald, then the people that you want to access your paper will not be able to access it. And now that you have checked that the journal is, if the journal says that they're indexed in a certain database, always go back to the database and check. Why do I say this? Because some predatory journals will claim to be indexed in certain databases. So a predatory journal will sometimes say, hey, I'm indexed in PubMed. But when you go to PubMed's website, you will not be able to find them. So that is a red flag for a predatory journal. And what's even worse, some predatory journals will make up fake indices. So be familiar with the indices that are common in your area. I mentioned Emerald. Emerald publishes mostly on business and administration, so you're not going to find a medical paper on Emerald. So if there's a medical journal that says it's you get the idea. Some predatory journals will claim to be indexed in certain databases when they're not, and some will make up fake indices. Now, another issue to consider, and some of you mentioned the cost. Don't choose the most expensive journal. And I should add, don't choose the cheapest one either. APCs are becoming more and more expensive. This is a reality, and all of us researchers in low and middle income countries are struggling with this. And this is true for researchers in Bangladesh, in Sri Lanka, in Nigeria, in Mexico, in Nicaragua, like all over the global south, we are struggling with more and more expensive APCs. So you have options. One would be to find a hybrid or subscription journal. A hybrid journal is a journal that will either let you publish under the subscription method where you don't pay, or that will have an optional gold open access fee. So find a hybrid journal or a subscription journal that allows for self-archiving. This is green open access. So if the journal will allow you to post a preprint or a postprint in your personal website or in an institutional repository or in Medline Plus or wherever, this essentially makes your paper open access, because now we have like Google Scholar will be able to see if the paper is open access somewhere. On Paywall, a little add-on to your Chrome browser will find open access versions of the paper if they exist. So that's one option, finding a subscription journal and archiving a preprint or a postprint in an institutional repository. The other option is to find a journal that doesn't charge an APC or a subscription fee. This is called Platinum Open Access, and these rare unicorns do exist. Many regional journals will be Platinum Open Access. So, for example, there are a lot of journals like Latin American or Central American journals that will follow this model. How are they financed? Where do they get their money? From an institution, from a university. So in these cases, a university, a professional society is going to pay for the APC, and neither the author nor the reader will need to pay anything. So try to find one of these. And the other one, sorry. My computer froze. Give me 1 minute or several. I can come back to the other slide in a minute. Don't be tempted by a higher. Okay, sorry about that. My PowerPoint froze. I'm sorry. Unfortunately, technical glitches will happen. Let me restart my presentation and I'll be with you shortly. Okay. Okay, we are almost. Okay, lovely time for this to happen. My PowerPoint is going crazy. Apologies for that. Again, I am very sorry for that. Let's go back to, where were we? Okay, we're back. Sorry for the technical glitch. Now, there's yet another option. Check the journal website and find whether there are waivers for researchers for your country. So always ask the editor. I mean, the worst that can happen if they tell you that there are no waivers and you're right back where you started. But always ask if, and we have done it. Like my colleagues have done it. We have written to the editor saying, hey, we don't have funding for your APC, but we would like to, once the paper has been accepted, we have written to the editor saying that we don't have funding for the APC. So, and we have received waivers. The thing is, you have to read the instructions and you have to like really find it in their website, because for that particular journal, they said that any waiver request had to be done before we clicked on yes, we accept, because once we clicked on yes, we accept, I don't remember what the exact window was, but once we clicked on that, there was nothing to be done. So any requests had to be done before that step. So always check the instructions, always look through the website to see what options you have, because we are aware that APCs are becoming more and more expensive, or as we say in Mexico, impagables, unpayable. So always check for green open access, find platinum open access options, and always ask the editor. Okay, so I either have a laser pointer or, okay. Now, continuing on this, don't be tempted by a high impact factor. High impact factor does not equal to higher impact. Impact is something that is very difficult to measure, and it has nothing to do with the impact factor. The impact factor is a bibliometric index, a bibliometric measure that is proprietary from the journal citation reports from Clarivate Analytics. So only the journals that are indexed by Clarivate Analytics are going to have an impact factor. There are going to be many journals that are legit, but they don't have an impact factor. So what the impact factor does, it is that it indicates how much on average an article in the journal is cited, but it doesn't say how much one particular paper will be cited. So someone can publish in a very high impact journal, a journal with a very high impact factor, and that particular paper will be cited 0 times. It can happen. And we need to remember that it is not valid for comparisons from field to field. I work a lot with biomedical researchers and people who work with immunology and cancer. And in cancer, we have some, I find them absurd, like some really high impact factors. I think one of them is close to 100. Another one is going to be 78 or over 50. In some fields, though, like fishery science, your highest impact factor is going to be around 2. So I cannot compare my cancer journal with an impact factor of 12 with a fishery science journal with an impact factor of 2. There is no way to compare them because their audiences are very, very different. And one audience is going to be larger and one audience is going to be smaller. This has nothing to do with how prestigious the journal is or how good the journal is. So for that, we invented quartiles. Quartiles? Anyway, so you can have, now you can compare them, because if you have a quartile 1 journal for cancer and a quartile 1 journal for fishery science, then you can make a comparison that these are both top in their fields. You need to remember that there are other citation metrics. So you have Scimago journal ranking, which is similar to the impact factor, but it's calculated a little bit different, like they use a different denominator in their formula. You have the H index, which for individual researchers is going to give you an idea of how many papers have been cited and a certain number of times. But remember that none of these are perfect. So the H index, for example, you can have one person with 100 papers who have been cited once each, and another researcher with one paper that has been cited 100 times, and they will both have the same H index. So none of these metrics are perfect, and you need to learn how they work and play with them. And remember that predatory journals are going to use fake metrics. So they're going to come up with things like the Einstein impact factor or the scientific impact factor. These are all fake. And remember that there are other ways to measure impact. So familiarize yourself with the San Francisco Declaration for Research Assessment, which will measure not only citations, but also patents, how prevalent this particular research has been in the news, if it actually has been implemented in the industry, for example. And of course, you have altmetrics, which will measure again how a paper is, whether a paper is mentioned on social media, or if it's mentioned on Wikipedia, or if it's mentioned on the news. Altmetrics will take care of that. And some journals are already counting altmetrics. And also remember that there are many kinds of journals. So you have your top tier multidisciplinary journals. These will include Nature Science, Philosophical Transactions, which is invitation only now. PNAS, the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences of the United States. You have your top tier specialized journals like the Lancet, Cell, Development, the Journal of Political Economy. You have your mega journals, which are online, open access, and multidisciplinary. So you have PLOS ONE, PeerJ, Scientific Reports, Frontiers, and Sage Open. You have your international specialized journals like the Lancet Diabetes and Endocrinology, which is going to be a specialized journal. The Journal of Supply Chain Management, Pavement Engineering. So if you are a pavement engineer, this is the journal for you. It's going to have a relatively small impact factor compared to, say, The Lancet, but that's because there are only a few pavement engineers in the world. You have Fungal Diversity, the Journal of Conflict Resolution, and then you have your regional specialized journals, the Chinese Journal of Ecology, the Malawi Medical Journal, the Sri Lankan Journal of Psychiatry, and Paleontología Mexicana, for a few examples. So you have many journals to choose from, and you need to choose the one that will reach your desired audience. So, for example, I have a friend who is an astronomer who prefers to publish in a very small journal of planetary science rather than on a bigger astronomy journal, because the people who do the research that he does read that particular journal, even though it has a very, very tiny impact factor. So everything depends on your audience. And of course, we all know this, don't publish in a predatory journal. These are journals that obtain publication fees, so they will charge you. Sometimes, well, they're usually cheaper than legit journals, but these are not valid peer-reviewed scholarly publications. So you have two red flags here. It's going to be unrealistically cheap, and it's going to have unrealistically short turnaround times. Why do they have these short turnaround times? Because they don't do peer review. So they can publish your paper in a couple of days. They have an unrealistically broad scope, as I mentioned, everything from astronomy to zoology. And they are going to be very flashy, but poorly crafted, and they're going to have grammatical errors on their websites. However, this is not your only, this shouldn't be your only criteria. They use fake metrics and indices, and they have incomplete contact information. And sometimes when you Google their address, it's going to be a parking lot. I have seen journals that are located in the middle of a field. These, of course, are predatory journals. And you can see this website, Think, Check, Submit, to see a list of questions that you should answer before deciding whether that journal is legitimate or not. And I should mention here, don't rely only on blacklists. There are some blacklists like the Bell's list, and there are others. But their criteria are not exactly transparent, and there are some issues with this list that they may be prejudiced or biased. So don't rely only on your blacklist. Rather, go to Think, Check, Submit, and see that you answer all the questions to see that your journal is legitimate. And don't pass on preprints. Preprints are very common in physics and in astronomy. They are starting to take off in biomedical research. Well, in some countries, they are already very, very common. So consider posting your manuscript in a preprint server before submitting journals. This will make your research open access as well, in a way. And again, in biological fields, the use of preprints has increased, particularly in the wake of COVID-19. Consider that some funding sources are going to require that your research will be openly accessible. So publishing a preprint is also a way of making your research accessible, but please check your journal's instructions. If the journal says that you can publish in a preprint server or in a particular preprint server, then go ahead and do it. If the journal doesn't state it, ask the editor. And if you do publish a preprint, say it in your cover letter, because every journal now is using similarity detecting software or plagiarism checkers. And if you have a preprint, it is going to be a match to your paper. So you need to tell the editor beforehand that you have a preprint, just in case. And well, these are some of the ideas. You covered all of that in our discussion groups. And this material was adapted from our authored core slides on writing and publishing journal articles. And we still have our closing discussion now. So we are going to go to breakout rooms to discuss now that we know what we shouldn't do, just to discuss what we should do now for publishing a paper. Okay, welcome back. Somebody's listening to really good music. Okay, we are coming back for all of the people on the bootcamp. One of the icebreaker activities we had when I was taking some facilitation training, it was a bit like an impromptu networking, but you had to share your favorite song with whoever was talking to you. And another way to like do a little icebreaker for class is to share like have a public playlist, and you create like if everyone has Spotify accounts or whatever, you create a public playlist and ask everyone to contribute a song. So that's another way to break the ice. Okay, so we're back from, let me check that I'm not muted. Yes, we're back from our little conversation, and we have one final whiteboard, and we need to choose 5 top tips of what to look for in a good journal for our research. So Tabitha, can you help us with the whiteboard, please? Thank you so much. And now we are going to each group is going to write one idea, and then we are going to vote on which are the top things that we should focus on when choosing a journal. And I think 10 minutes for this is going to be enough. I would advise people to better use a Post-it, because if you do a Post-it, then you can vote on your suggestions. Yes, we can share the presentation. Of course, I will. I think Tabitha already has a copy of it, but I think we can share it.
Yeah, we can email it to everyone.
Thank you. So we have, following the scope and nature of the journal, we have deciding early. Keep in mind its scope, impact, reputation, requirements. Look at the instructions. Avoid predatory journals. Yes, that is #1 advice. Avoid predators at all costs. Let me zoom out a bit. Read the guidelines of the journal. Check the fit for the research study, and will it do justice to my research paper? That is a very interesting concept. Will it do justice to my paper? That is a good thing to consider. Reading the guidelines carefully. Nasir is writing a very good summary of the presentation. Beware of either the most expensive or the most cheap journal. That's good advice. And remember, if you have 2 journals, both alike in dignity, if you have 2 journals that are, one is more expensive than the other, but both are open access and both are indexed in the same databases, then you're basically paying for status if you go for the more expensive one. Can I afford the payment of the journal? That is a very good question. And usually a good question to ask yourself at the beginning of the project. Oh, check sources in case the journal has been flagged. This one is very interesting. I don't know if a new, oh, well, I was going to say, I don't know if the news, if you're going to find stories about journals in the newspaper, but last week, I think Thursday, my local paper published a story about a journal that was making a lot of money by publishing a lot of special numbers, like thousands of special numbers a year, and really makes you think, like, is there anything, like, is it really that special? Okay, we have a couple more minutes so we can finish our discussion. And those of you who have posted in your little sticky notes, you can upvote, you can vote on your sticky notes. So for example, don't be deceived by the impact factor. You can vote +1, or you can downvote if you want. And you can vote on them so we can find the top 5 ideas. I think it's Nasir, the comment in green here. They're suggesting we use journal selectors like Jane Biosemantic. There are several artificial intelligence tools that can help you choose a journal. So if you know about these, if you have used them, share them on the chat, because we would all like to look into them. But yeah, there are some artificial intelligence tools that can help you. And I think Elsevier had a journal finder where you pasted your abstract and it'll tell you which journals will be good for your research. So if you have any resources that you'd like to share, now is a good time to put them in the chat, please. Okay, so we have a few votes here. Don't be deceived by the impact factor has 1, has 2. Does the journal appear to be real, or is it too good to be real? Of course. Is it too good to be true? Is it like super cheap, indexed everywhere, and matches your scope? If it's too good to be true, it probably isn't. So check. Check whether the journal is still indexed in Medline. Medline particularly has a very small pool of journals. I think it's about 5,000 compared to Science Direct, which is above 20,000. So yeah, if the journal claims to be indexed in Medline, then it should be. You should be able to find it on Medline's website. Okay, so I think we have a very good summary of our presentation and of our discussions. Before we finish, do we have a closing remarks? I would like 3 people to raise their hand and participate. What should we do when choosing a journal? Nasir, yes?
I think the most important thing that we do our homework.
Yes.
We do our homework before we start our study or we start our research, and even before we start writing, and then look for the best possible journal, may it be a local, regional, or international, based on the impact of our study. And then look at the instruction to the authors, and keep an eye on the pocket as well to look for article processing charges, right?
Yes, perfect, Nasir. That was great. Lenny? Sure. Thank you.
I think one more thing is about doing a homework. Thank you, Nazir, for bringing that up. And we always have this tendency that we have to submit it so fast that we forget to redo a check. I think probably doing a homework comes into it, where probably asking a few more people and getting the feedback makes a great difference to the manuscript. And I think I would go with what Nazir has said. Do your homework well.
Yes, good question. Muhammad? Yes?
Yeah, I think at times we get too distracted by the impact factor and so many other things, but I think it is important just to get your work out and get it published, because as it has been mentioned previously as well, impact journal does not I mean, it's not the only thing. It's the way you communicate your research with your colleagues, with other people. So I think the important thing would be just to get your research out, out of your computer and into the world.
Yes. Yeah, if a research is written but not published, did it ever happen? So that's a really good advice. Yes. Don't be paralyzed by choices. And finally, Babalola.
Yeah, thank you, Alejandra, for the excellent presentation. My take home from this meeting is the quantile value of the journal, that I should pay particular attention to that over and above the impact factor. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, thank you. You probably noticed that I had a few issues with my presentation today. Let me see if my final slide was saved. Because I have, before we finish, I have a little recap. For all of you who are taking the facilitator bootcamp, I have a little recap of the techniques that we used today. Let me see if I have it on my presentation, because again, PowerPoint was not friendly today. Of course, I lost it. Fantastic. Okay. I'm going to do this orally. Apologies for that. But for all of you in the facilitators bootcamp, the purpose of today's of this exercise was to show you that you can use discussion techniques online that can help you. That those techniques that you would do in a classroom, like small group discussions and bulletin boards and world cafes, etc., can happen online. And you have several tools to do it. So what we did today, if you want to go for the name of techniques, we did impromptu networking, which is what we did in lieu instead of an introduction round. Because if you wait for people to introduce themselves one by one, you're going to use about 30 minutes of your time, and not a lot is going to happen on that. So we used impromptu networking for people to talk with each other and get to know each other a little and start discussing the topics at hand. And you can use whatever trigger question you want. In this case, I went for one that had to do with our topic specifically. But you can ask people what is their favorite song. You can ask them what they did, what's their favorite vacation spot. But if you're going to use a trigger question, always use trigger questions that can't be answered with a yes or no. So instead of asking, do you like traveling? Yes, that's it. That's the end of the conversation. So you can ask, what was your favorite trip? And then you get people talking. I am going to paste it here. You can find more deliberating structures in your, I'm trying to send it on the chat. We also used 1, 2, 4, all. That activity where I had you think about something for a minute and then discuss in pairs and then discuss in fours and then discuss with the group. That is your bread and butter for facilitation. If you master that technique, the world is yours, essentially. Again, the trigger question is really important, and the use of bulletin boards, whiteboards, sticky notes, etc. This will allow everyone to participate without you having to go one by one. What did you see? What did you think? So you just have them, everyone jot their ideas in a whiteboard like we did today. We use Zoom's native whiteboard. And the main activity is called TRIZ, T-R-I-Z. And this is the counterintuitive one where you ask people like, what is the worst that can happen? So if you're planning a vacation, you start with what is the worst that can happen during our vacation? We forget our passports, we are late to the airport, we forget to pack, and then you finish that by asking, how can we make sure that doesn't happen? So that was the main discussion for our session today. We started asking, how can we make sure to choose the worst possible journal for research? And then we ended with, how can we make sure we choose the best journal for research? So that's it. And as Tabitha said, yes, when you facilitate this online, it is really helpful, I would say necessary, to have someone help you in the background with the breakout rooms, with your presentation in case, or with setting the whiteboard, posting the links, pasting the instructions. Having clear instructions is very important, but also having someone support you when you're facilitating is also very important. And also, most importantly, keep track of the time. The point of these facilitation techniques is to get people moving and to get people talking, but in an organized manner. So keeping track of the time is really, really important. And one more thing, if you're using a new tool that people may not be familiar with, start with a game where they get to use that tool. So when the time comes to do the real exercise, people are familiar with the tool. So yeah, if anyone has any question, we still have 10 minutes left in our session. So if you have any questions regarding either how to choose a journal or on facilitating stuff online, we have 10 minutes for that. The name of the technique is TRIS. Let me share the link. Sorry. It's TRISED. And I am sharing the link when I find my Zoom. Here it is. And I'm also sharing the menu for liberating structures, and you're going to find the ones that I used there. Your bread and butter that I mentioned is going to be the 1, 2, 4 all. If you have a very large group, so if you're hosting 100 people or 200 people, then instead of 1, 2, 4 all, it's 1, 3, 5 all, or 1, 4, 6, 1, 4, 8 all, and you just multiply so you can have a manageable number of groups. But again, the idea of these techniques is to have everyone discuss, everyone participate, and to level the field. And as you know, you are experienced researchers. You already are experts. So when you have a group that is so experienced as the one that I had today, it's better to take on the knowledge of the group instead of assuming that people don't know. No, people do know, and they know more than you think. So you have a lot of insights that I may not have. So using these techniques and discussing this in groups will take from the experience of the whole group, and everyone will learn as a result. So we still have time for more questions. And if there are no questions, thank you for joining me. I was very nervous. You can ask Tabitha. I was very nervous about this session. I think it went well in spite of PowerPoint. But thank you everyone for joining, and I will be around the rest of the sessions. Anil is asking, is there any journal that belongs to this platform? If you mean INASP, no, INASP doesn't have any journals. However, at some point we have supported Nepal journals online and Sri Lanka journals online, and I think Central American journals online. So, but no, INASP doesn't publish any journals. Okay, so thank you everyone. You've been great. Your participation was greatly appreciated, and thank you, Tabitha, for your wonderful support during this session. Have a lovely rest of the day.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
See you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Goodbye.